The United States makes the UN work when it wants it to work. And that is exactly the way it should be, because the only question to the United States is what's in our national interest.
My name is John, and the International Criminal Court is back in session. It is June 23rd, 2025, and there has been a lot of interesting news occurring mainly in the Middle East, but there has been some news occurring too in Ukraine. So, let's start off, shall we? Now, I want to first talk about the situation in the city of Kremenchuk, or Kremenchuk, as people would say in Russian. The city's energy infrastructure was struck hard by the Russians, and apparently the damage is really, really bad. Like, so bad that it may no longer be usable for the Ukrainians moving forward. And if you ask me, this is part of Russia's piece by piece, like death by a thousand cuts strategy. And along with, of course, payback time for what happened in the early part of June when the Ukrainians attacked Russian bases across the whole country with their use of drones. But otherwise, though, it's mostly been the same old strikes that you've been seeing in Kiev, in Kharkiv, in Chernigov, and SUMY, and I guess Odessa and Mykolaiv too. I mean, all sorts of, like, big metropolitan centers within Ukraine. It's the same old business as usual stuff for Russia. But other than that, though, they are advancing, though nowhere as big as they did in my last video. So, first of all, let's talk about the situation in SUMY region, or SUMY Oblast. So the Ukrainians have started, supposedly, a counteroffensive to kick the Russians out of the occupied territories within SUMY. They have recaptured the village of Andriivka, which was first reported by Zelensky himself, but like the comedian he is, he didn't provide any sort of proof whatsoever to back up those claims. And even though the Ukrainians were able to push the Russians back just by a little bit, there have been reports of high casualties in this area for the armed forces of Ukraine. Now, I don't think they're going to stop here. I think they're going to continue to try to push the Russians back as far as they're able to until they're no longer able to do such a thing. I mean, if you look at the total area in SUMY that is under the control of Russia right now, it's like a mix of both of the northern border areas in the Kharkiv region that are like combined into one. It's like a total of like 200 square kilometers of territory. Now, I don't think the Russian offensive in SUMY is completely dead. They are still trying to take the sizable village of Yanukovka. And if they're able to do this, then they'll be able to establish themselves more permanently within SUMY, though I think it's going to still take some time. Though I don't think Yanukovka is going to be as bad as like Volchansk was, because there's no river crossing there, and not to mention there's no commie blocks here, which makes this a lot easier, like completely easier than Volchansk if you ask me, but time will tell. I do think the Russian offensive will slow down for a while due to the fact that this isn't really a major priority target for them. I mean, maybe as far as they'll go is, like, maybe, like, Khotin, or, I don't know, like, some outskirt towns or villages of SUMY city itself, but I'm not expecting them to enter the city anytime soon. And as I said, it's not a priority target for them. But yeah, there have been also no movements in the direction of Myropolya either, which doesn't really surprise me because, again, SUMY is not the main front for the Russians in the summer campaign. I mean, it does play a role, but it's not a major role. Nothing really going on in the city of Volchansk, so we can skip here. We can also skip the Lipsy direction too. Now, in the Kupiansk/Eastern Kharkiv direction, there has been some strange movement going on, mostly in the northern outskirts of Kupiansk itself. So apparently the Russians have claimed that they have taken over the outskirt village of Moskovka, which the Ukrainians renamed to something else, but Google hasn't updated it yet. And if the reports were to be true that Moskovka was taken by Russia, then that would effectively put Rakivka under Russian control again. And also, it would put the Russians literally inside the city of Kupiansk. Like, directly. Like, properly, they would be in Kupiansk. But the problem, though, is they had no evidence to, the Russian MOD, that is, they had no evidence whatsoever to back up those claims. And as a result, a lot of people disregarded it and said, yeah, this is just some fake news just to raise the morale of troops in that part of the front. But, however, Deep State just reported earlier that the village of Hulyobivka is contested. They put it in their gray zone, and Syriac decided to concur with this. Now, if Hulyobivka were to fall to Russian control, not much would really change in the grand scheme of things because they would not be in Kupiansk yet. But if they were to take the villages of Moskovka and Rakivka, then you can talk about another Battle of Kupiansk happening, for real this time. But until that time comes, nothing really much has changed on this front, but you should all keep an eye on it this summer. Now, next up, let's go to the situation in the southern Kupiansk direction, or the northern Liman front, that is. So apparently Russians are trying to take over Karpivka, and they have entered the Kharkiv region from the south. And so far, they are contesting for, if not taken most of the village of Novy Mir. And now there's also confirmation with geolocations provided and such that the village of Hrikivka was taken by Russia. And with the taking of this village, this means that there's only around like 1 to 2 left in the Lugansk region that is still under AFU control. There's a bit of dispute regarding the fate of Nadia, but there is indeed confirmation that Tiver Doklibove is still under Ukrainian control. And should this entire strip of land fall, then Lugansk region is back under firm Russian control, and it would end the Lugansk campaign probably once and for all in Ukraine. Like, Ukrainians will never be able to get this close to Lugansk again. And also, it would further pressure Borova too. But I think in order for Borova to even be doable for the Russians, they have to cut this whole area up. Like, they would have to go all the way to the Oskar River and force the Ukrainians to fold back towards the other side of the Oskar. But other than that, though, not a lot has changed. And then moving down south, there's apparently a report that the Russians are fighting it out right now for the village of Siri Branka. And there is reports that they were able to take some parts of it, but it's not confirmed yet completely. And yeah, Siversk is in trouble this summer, but I don't know if it's going to fall because Russia doesn't really seem to give enough of a crap about it. And then moving down south to Chasiv Yar, the Russians are still continuing to advance in the southern outskirts of the town itself. And it now all seems but certain that Chasiv Yar is going to fall to Russia maybe in July or August at the latest. But if you ask for my opinion, I don't think Chasiv Yar is going to fall until Toretsk falls. They are going to fall around the exact same time. And speaking of which, we should move down to Toretsk right now. Deep State has confirmed that Dachny and Kremsky seem to be under majority, if not complete, Russian control. And they have given more of Toretsk to Russia as well. Months ago, Toretsk was in chaos, and it looked like Ukrainians were going to try to make the Russians run away. But now, all the momentum has shifted back in favor of the Russians, and it looks like they're not going to be looking towards the other side again. It looks like Toretsk is about to fall to Russia. There is a small strip of Ukrainians still here in the western districts, but that's pretty much it. Otherwise, Toretsk is under Russian control as of right now, and it appears that the outskirts suburbs of Novospassky and Shishir Benivka are going to fall to Russia too, because now they're in a cauldron. In fact, there was a geolocated advance that was confirmed by Creamy Caprice earlier on Telegram this morning, and apparently it appears that Russians have put this entire area into a cauldron. So, the battle for Toretsk is definitely ending in July, and once these two villages fall, then I don't see the Russians really having much trouble capturing Katernivka and Klibambuk. And then you also have reports of the Russians taking half control of Yablanovka, and now there's also reports that they have taken complete control over the village of Alexandro Kalinove. And once this is all clear, then the battle for Konstantinovka will start. Well, I mean, I don't really know about that. Maybe not until late summer or maybe fall. But the Russians still have to clear out all of this before they can start the battle for Konstantinovka. But that day is coming sooner than you all think. Nothing much has really changed in this part of the Krasnaya Armysk direction. But the western part, though, had a little bit. So apparently, there's a bit of a difficulty regarding the fate of Suky Yar, and I guess Suryak colored it in favor of the Ukrainians again. But in this part of the Pokrovsk direction, or Krasnaya Armysk direction, he has put this large area into a gray zone, which is south of the key village of Udachny. For months, Udachny has been contested between the AFU and the RUAF, and if the Russians were able to take Udachny, then there's virtually really nothing stopping them from entering the Dnipropetrovsk region from this direction. Molodetsky is not going to be a well-defended area. The Russians will easily take it, and then they'll just enter Dnipropetrovsk region without an issue in this area. But yeah, what I think is going to happen is, based on these recent advances, the Russians are going to try to seize Udachny maybe next month or in August, and then they'll advance further west. I don't know if they're going to advance towards Pokrovsk itself until the northern flanks or outskirts are dealt with. I just don't see it happening. I do think there's going to be an offensive into Dnipropetrovsk, but into Pokrovsk itself, not until you deal with these northern outskirts of the city. And now, moving into the soon-to-be folded South Donetsk direction. So, Russia has entered Dnipropetrovsk region proper, as I think I said in my last video, which was a week ago. And it appears that the village of Zaporizhia has, not to be confused with the city of Zaporizhia, or the Zaporizhia just a little up north, not far from the Dnipropetrovsk region, has come under complete Russian control. Geolocations were provided and everything by the Vostok group, which is one of the elite Russian army groupings in Ukraine. Yalta is also, according to Deep State, now contested between Russians and Ukrainians, and then I just don't think Yalta is going to hold for long. I think this village is going to fall quickly. Zerka is not contested yet, but it certainly will be in a matter of days. And then in the outskirts of Komar, it appears that the village of Peribudova has fallen completely to the Russians, or fallen completely. They took this bank of the Mokyali River, which goes all the way down to the Ugledar front, and also to Velika Novosilka front. And then with this capture here, the Russians will be able to attack the villages of Myern. They'll be able to attack the village of Volskrinsinka. And they'll try to finish off the job in Shevchenko. But yeah, now that this crossing is successful, along with the continuous successes in the fields outside of Shevchenko, it's only a matter of time before Russia enters Dnipropetrovsk region from the eastern, like southeastern direction. And speaking of Shevchenko, the Russians have begun their long-awaited assault into the village, and it appears that the place is already about to fall to Russia. It looks like around like 60 or so % of it is already under Russian control. The entire southern portion is already gone, and the entire eastern section is gone too now. So all there is left is the central and the western parts. Now, this is where some valuable minerals are located in, which is Shevchenko, though we don't know how much deposits are there. But once you get Shevchenko out of the way, then it's just basically a bunch of empty fields. Like, the Russians will be able to steamroll the Ukrainians here, and there won't be much they can really do about it. Like, this is a key defensive point for the armed forces of Ukraine, south of this defensive line, and once it's gone, then the Russians will be able to advance for a while, not just the rest of South Donetsk direction, but also into Dnipropetrovsk. So, yeah, folks, that's basically the update for today. Now, I don't know if I'm going to really bother covering the whole situation between Israel and Iran. I am aware that there were a lot of airstrikes and a lot of ballistic missiles fired upon each other by both sides. And apparently there recently was a Persian strike at a U.S. airbase in Doha, Qatar. And apparently it scared the crap out of the Qatari residents there, or tourists. And it appears, for now, it appears that the Persians and the Israelis have rumored to agree to a ceasefire, though both sides have not confirmed it yet. Oil prices are going down right now, which is not good news for Russia because they wanted those oil prices to stay up. But yeah, if this were to hold, I think this whole thing was a draw. Like, neither side really achieved anything. Like, Israel wanted to get rid of the Ayatollah Khamenei and his regime from power, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen. If anything, they appear to unify the people of Iran, and Iran is not going to really achieve anything, too, because they lost a lot of senior officials, too, to Israeli airstrikes, and have also kind of lost some of their nuclear facilities, though they were able to transport out their uranium resources in time. So yeah. Well, that's going to do it for today's video, everybody. I hope we'll have more to talk about next week, but until then, I'll see you guys all next time, and take care. Peace out, and goodbye.